Indigenous leaders worldwide are now raising the alarm over how the Western world is responding to the climate emergency. And to be honest, their critique here isn't that the West isn't doing enough, although I'm sure they would have that critique. Their concern is how the response to the climate emergency actually puts indigenous communities, not just here in the United States, but across the world, at a significant disadvantage. And they feel that they are not part of the conversation. So during last week's annual UN summit, hundreds of indigenous chiefs, presidents, chairmen, and delegates gathered at the 22nd United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. And I was really happy to see that they addressed the response to the climate emergency. And they expressed concerns over the exploitation of indigenous territories for the resources needed to transition from, let's say, gas-powered vehicles to electric vehicles. So The Guardian reported on this. I'm gonna read some of the relevant excerpts for you. They write that the longtime advocacy group, Cultural Survival, in partnership with other organizations, highlighted how mining for minerals such as nickel, lithium, cobalt, and copper, the resources needed to support products like electric car batteries, are presenting conflicts in tribal communities in the United States and around the world. In fact, while this might not have much to do with indigenous communities, part of the reason why the United States was pushing for that coup in Bolivia is because having a right-wing leader, right-wing government in charge would open up US business interests to possible lithium mining in the country. Now, luckily, the people of Bolivia stood up and reversed the outcome of that pretty gross coup. But I do worry about some of the geopolitical ramifications of having to mine for the minerals and the lithium necessary for these EV batteries. And by the way, like I said, this isn't just an issue here in the United States, right? So environmental projects that require minerals or wind power are usurping the rights of indigenous people, according to this report, from the American Southwest to the Arctic to the Serengeti in Africa. So Brian Mason, chairman of the Shoshone Paiute tribe in the Duck Valley Indian Reservation in Nevada, said that the 70 or so lithium mining applications targeting the lands there have come without free, prior, or informed consent, what is considered the cornerstone of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And he also described the lithium extraction efforts as being on a fast track to supply the Biden administration's net zero strategy to create a domestic supply of EVs. He says, quote, "It's kind of just being rammed down our throats," he said, "at the cost of indigenous peoples once again." The Guardian also reports that Gun-Britt Redder of the Sami Council says that green colonialism, and that's what they're labeling this as, is driving harmful projects like the Fosen onshore wind farm, which was built despite a Supreme Court ruling in Norway in defense of Sami reindeer herding grounds. They just built the wind farm anyway, despite the ruling, which sounds strange, and I feel like there should probably be some enforcement mechanism to ensure that what the courts rule is actually implemented. But Gun-Britt Redder also says this: "They look to us to carry the heaviest burden, and it's a disproportionate part of the burden. We need to reduce CO2 emissions globally, and we need to seek alternative energy sources. But we also need to protect the indigenous cultures because we are the guardians of nature, which is part of the solution." And I agree with Gun-Britt Redder on that. They should absolutely be part of the conversation. But taking a step back and looking at the bigger picture, I do feel a little bit of concern about the lack of analysis in regard to the downsides of electric vehicles. I mean, I feel like the way that it's been framed really downplays some of the environmental burdens, also some of the economic burdens for ordinary people who might not have the money to buy some of these expensive vehicles once we make a transition to electric vehicles. And I do worry about what this is doing to communities where the mining takes place or where the wind farms are built. Are the residents of those communities part of the conversation? What's being done to properly compensate them for any of the harm or damage that might be done to their communities? These are difficult questions. Every issue we talk about on the show, including solutions to the climate emergency, are complex. There are gradations. Nothing is good and bad, black and white. There are costs, there are benefits. These are things that we need to weigh. And what I can't stand is the insanely simplistic way these stories get covered in the news. It's either you're a good guy who supports electric vehicles or you're a bad guy who's against them. But there are plenty of good people, including members of these indigenous communities, who see some significant downsides, and I think we should listen to their concerns here. Doesn't make you someone who wants to minimize climate change or avoid responding to the climate emergency. Just means that we need to find solutions by bringing everyone to the table, especially those who stand to suffer some of the consequences of these new projects.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.